Welcome back to Walk with TFB. Tim Bryson here, and as y'all know, I'm a Black millennial who's eager to have unfiltered conversation with authentic people centered on education, sport, and culture. Today, we are launching, really recording episode 19, season 4 of the Walk with TFB podcast. And though it's episode 19, I would also call this episode part 1 of the season finale, as we finally get to have a conversation with one of the most powerful educators in my life this far. Met this person a long time ago, probably 15 years ago. His name was Illya. He soon then became mentor, mentee, and now I call this man Pops, my father, my dad. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. So y'all help me welcome Illya Thomas. Brother Ill, what's up, homie?
What's up? Good to be walking with you today, brother.
Man, it's good to see you. It's good to see you. And literally, I had to do a preview, 2 to 3 minute preview on Instagram, dropped it on TikTok, I believe, as well, and said, look, I know I've been gone. I'm not sorry. But these last 2 episodes of season 4, you're going to want to lock into. You're going to want to lock into these last 2
pressure.
episodes.
No pressure. No pressure.
There's no pressure. We're having fun, yo. And so, like I said, this season is focused on education and educators. And I wanted you to be on this episode, not just because, I call you Pops, because you're my dad, but really the mentor-mentee relationship that we've had established and have cultivated over the last, I don't even know, 15 years, maybe 15? I don't know how long it's been.
I think so.
But it's been super important to me.
Yeah.
But before we jump into learning more about who you are and what's your story, first question, what's bringing you Black joy right now?
What's bringing me some joy is seeing you in that soccer uniform. I remember the very first thing that we did together was do soccer. You showed up at soccer fields, and that's where I learned the game. 15 years ago, I didn't know that about soccer. We didn't play that growing up. That was on the other side of town. Whether that was Indianapolis or Wichita, all the different spots I spent. We didn't do soccer. And so we learned that together, and I love that you introduced this talking about me as mentor and mentee, because as the 15 years have shifted, I've learned a lot about you. I mean, a lot from you, in addition to about you, relative to how to handle well the 15-year-old daughter in my house, the 13-year-old daughter going on 20, who's in my house. And so you keep me connected with all kinds of things. And so it's been a mutually beneficial relationship. So seeing you today and in this conversation is bringing me joy right now.
No, I appreciate that. And I wore this jersey on purpose, which I'm going to get to in the second segment, because you gifted me this jersey. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But segment 1, jumping right into it. Not only did I not want to do research on you, but it would have been hard to do so, given you didn't grow up in this, digital age like the millennials. And
some digital footprint out there. I didn't grow up from day one, but it's a little digital footprint out there.
A little bit. I had to scroll through the newspapers, yo. You know what I'm saying? But question 1, segment 1. What's your story, Illya? Talk to us. What's your story?
Man, well, I guess education is an interesting context to the moment I'm standing right now. I'm borrowing somebody's office in the Wyoming City Schools school board office. I serve on the school board here in Wyoming. In April, it'll be 4 years that I've been doing that. And that was really an opportunity for me to jump into this community and serve this community and its kids, including the 2 that I have, kind of here. But it started well back. I didn't even recognize it, but my mother's father was on the school board in Yonkers, New York, in his time. And for me, as an African-American young man growing up in the 70s, 80s, it was very clear. My family communicated that education was everything. Education was the pathway, et cetera. So when I'm deciding in high school what I'm trying to do and how do I make my way, not on my own, but be a participant and a contributor to that, engineering education made sense, And so I looked at Purdue University. I was able to find my way through, and parents and scholarships and pieces of different things got me through to a graduation with a mechanical engineering degree, at Purdue, brought me to Cincinnati, working at Procter & Gamble, literally 25 years working in research and development against, challenges on Pampers and coffee and toilet paper for 10 years. And, after that worked, at a church for a brief time, really doing a lot of things now to just trying to help individual leaders develop, organizations grow to really reach their full potential. So all of that has been the result of education. And right now I'm doing a doctorate of ministry program on faith, work, economics, and vocation, looking at how do these things integrate such that ultimately people understand how to live their faith in every space that they're in, and to not have a sense that the only way you can serve the Lord, serve God as you understand him to be, is working at a church or working at a nonprofit or a religious institution. But everywhere that we are, we get to be that representative. So I'm in year 1, of that, trying to finish my last paper right now. A few years from now, maybe about the same time you graduate, I'll be trying to get to this doctorate of ministry program.
That's dope. Yeah, 2025. So I'm looking at spring, May 25. So the party's gonna be jumping.
Yeah,
definitely that summer, but a little bit before then as well. But you skipped over something a little bit, right? When I asked you what's bringing you Black joy, You mentioned, right, that soccer was something that was played across the town, right? It wasn't played in your area. In a similar way, you study engineering. We get there, right? I didn't know nothing about engineering until my sister went through her journey. Yep. But then you said Purdue, which I didn't even know a school existed, right? Again, prior to my sister looking at that program, and then you graduated from there. So like, why Purdue? Why engineering? How did you even get introduced to these areas?
Yeah, so like my father was a pastor, his father was a pastor, lots of people in my family. And my father said he did not want me to go into ministry. He said somebody in our family needed to make money. And that was a joke in a way, but it was also his way of freeing me to kind of think about a different path and not feel like that his path was the only way to proceed. And so I grew up, young with an interest, but also some aptitude for math and science. And honestly, math was my favorite subject. So you're thinking about what do you do with that, right? You've been taught to kind of use your talents and all that. So engineering, seemed like something that would utilize math and science, but it also was an opportunity for me to connect with some scholarship money and some other kind of things as I was thinking about how could I take some of that load off my parents. And so it was a pretty practical decision as a 10th grader in high school that I wanted to study engineering so that I could get some scholarship money to go get a degree and to get a job and to make a way. My father kind of put things together that gave us the opportunity. And so then I felt like I would take a next step and really establish, hopefully for our children, a different foundation, for them as they would go from that point. And so Purdue was, I went to high school in Indianapolis, the first part of high school. So Purdue was just up the road. And so I understood it was a great engineering education. At the time, it was still affordable, even for out-of-state students. So I'm calculating literally how much I had to get where I needed to get to. It was a perfect fit getting back home a bit, to some people and some friends I used to go to school with and that kind of thing. And it was in the middle of a cornfield also, which I also thought would help me focus a little bit. I wasn't at the point when I went to college, I would have been able to handle a big city school because it might have been too many wonderful distractions. So the cornfield of West Lafayette was a good home for me, 18 to 22.
Did y'all have Breakfast Club back then too?
I'm pretty sure they did. I actually never walked inside of Harry's Chocolate Shop. I will tell you, it took me years to understand the theme of Go Ugly Early. I didn't get it. I didn't catch it. I didn't even, the whole prohibition thing or whatever. I think I took my first drink about 3 years ago, first drink of wine. So I wasn't imbibing at that time, but I understood what the Harry's Chocolate Shop thing was all about.
That's real. Well, talk to us more about your experience at Purdue. Because one distinct memory I have as I was driving from Chick-fil-A preparing for this episode was you took me to a NSB conference, right? And I had someone like the other month ask me, "You an NSB?" I'm like, "Do I know what NSB?" Come on, man. Right? Like, but you've been engrossed in that community, obviously since your time as the undergraduate. But talk to us more about your undergraduate experience, given that I'm sure it's changed over the last, couple of decades.
Well, I won't do complete justice to this, but one of the benefits of being at Purdue as an African-American in engineering, the National Society of Black Engineers began at Purdue. That was its founding and its birthplace. And the founders were a part of our education. I got to serve as the president of our National Society of Black Engineers chapter. And so George Smith and other founders were on our industrial advisory board. We are friends today as a result of them telling their story and sharing what their experience was like. And honestly, it literally felt like they were investing in us and passing some things to us that we needed to live into, that we needed to live up to, and that we needed to pass on and to share with others in a way that helped them go further than they might have imagined in the same way that they were doing that for us.
You said you're friends with the founders of NSB?
Yes, I would say that. They're a few years older than me.
Well, sure.
Founded, about the time I was 3 or 4 or 5 years old. But these men were involved in our NSB chapter. Marion Blaylock was the Minority Engineering Program Director and legends in trailblazing, making way for people. The scholarship money that she allowed for me to connect to at Purdue was the only way that I was able to make it through there. And I graduated Purdue engineering with no debt, as a result of the investment that people put in the opportunity, getting some summer jobs, doing that kind of thing. But these people were there regularly on campus trying to help us understand what we were doing and what they had done and why it was important and why it was possible that we would step through those things, walk through those things, and then make ways for other people.
That's mind blowing to even think about and or fathom right now, one. But two, we talked about NSB. Looking at your LinkedIn, right? Motorboard, Iron Key, ODK. You're being a little modest. This is not the podcast to be humble on, my friend. But you did graduate. Go ahead.
Little shout out. The National NSB Conference is happening right now. I'm not there. I'm here in Cincinnati, but a good buddy of mine, Craig Garrett, is in Anaheim, California right now, along with thousands of others, doing the NSB Conference right now. And I was just talking with someone whose father is a Purdue professor or something, and she was asking me about my experiences at Purdue. And I sent her an email just this morning highlighting some of the things that I had a chance to get involved with. And it all started with the National Society of Black Engineers. So demonstrating a level of leadership, progressing toward learning about leadership as a part of that organization, got access for me to the Purdue Engineering Student Council. It got access to things like Omicron Delta Kappa and Mortarboard, which was a senior, kind of society there at Purdue, which was actually one of the ways that I felt by the time I left that it was my university. I got connected with people, Jane Hamlin and Dean Betty Nelson as a result of some organizations I was involved in, and Marion Blaylock. These leaders in that community, they became personal to me because they invested in me and saw some things that helped me see some things about myself. And so it made me feel like I wasn't in this foreign place that was somebody else's thing. In those 4.5 years I was there, because it was 4.5, I graduated in December of 1992. I felt like it was my home as a result of getting involved in some of these organizations and connecting a bit with the Purdue history and what it meant to be a Boilermaker.
I feel that. And Purdue's a great school. Shout out to my boy Nick, who also graduated from Purdue, athlete there. And you graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, right? Yeah. You eventually find your way to Procter & Gamble. Shout out to P&G, obviously located in Cincinnati, Ohio. And you kind of, again, you being too humble. You breezed your experience at P&G, right? You were there for a minute, R&D director, Baby Care Asia, global R&D vice. I didn't even know you were freaking a vice president. It's just mind blowing to me reading this. But I want to first start with your experience in Asia. This is around the time that you and I began, I would say, get more closer, right? Yeah, I started talking a little bit more at B-Dubs. We started watching more Chapel Hill basketball games. They won 2 natties during that time. But then you said, moving to Asia. Talk to us about that experience, especially as a Black man and Black family at that time, moving to a whole other country across the world.
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that prepared me for it was growing up in different parts of the United States. We moved a number of times. My dad was a pastor of a church, and then my parents separated or whatever. So I learned what it was to get used to dealing with new things, new people, new dynamics, and change. And it built something in me that was looking for what is the next change. And so at P&G, I was working in the family care organization for the first 13, 14 years of my career there, was able to progress to levels in the organization where I got the chance to lead other people. And that was one of my gifts and strengths at the time, but it was also something that was further developed as a result of working in R&D. I literally worked on Charmin for more than a decade, which one couldn't possibly imagine today. But I did work on coffee, after that. And when P&G sold the coffee business to Smucker's, there was a need for me to figure out what the job was going to be. And there was an opportunity in Baby Care Asia. At the time, I was living in Japan, but China, with its millions of babies, was bustling and just getting going with a high level of involvement in the baby care category. India, and Indonesia, 49 million babies, in the region. And so it was such a dynamic 3 years, stationed, kind of in Japan, but traveling all over the region and getting a chance to partner with people from every part of Asia. Because I'll tell you, when I lived in the United States thinking about Asia, I thought it was one thing, but when I got there, I realized Japan is very different than China. It's very different than Vietnam. It's very different than India and Indonesia. And getting a chance to go and do all that work and sitting in people's homes, talking with them about what it meant to care for their baby in that way with, a Pampers diaper, it made it matter in a way that was different. Our second daughter was born when we were in Japan. And so I felt like I was going through that with them and experiencing some of those common, dynamics. And I still today, have an affinity for Asian cultures and Asian people, not just the food, but when I see someone who I know is from an Asian country, it just sort of, I get a moment, or just remembers what it was to be in that formative, very dynamic space, challenging, and difficult, but really growthful, and probably something that changed the trajectory of my life, because P&G sent me there to see if I could be an executive and what would happen career-wise, et cetera. I feel like, honestly, God put us there to stretch us beyond ways we could understand or imagine, and just have us out of the home country and all of the known things into spaces that were completely unknown, and navigating that together and figuring that out. It's been something that still sticks with me today.
I mean, you said P&G put you there to see if you were prepared to be an executive, right? But obviously the story then unfolds. You were definitely ready for that moment. But as people who listen to this episode, look at, again, your LinkedIn, or just hear you talk now. I mean, you ascended from associate director to VP in 13, 14 years. Yeah. There's a lot of conversation, particularly right now within both the higher ed, nonprofit, corporate space, and how non-white males ascend the career ladder, right, in their organization. Yeah. What was it about you? What was it about P&G? What was it about the combination between the two, or amongst the three, right, that opened up an opportunity for you to not just walk in your purpose, but ascend the ladder to where you eventually retired?
Well, that's a complicated question because there's so many parts to it. I'll try to speak about them in order. When I was watching Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination hearing, one of the things I was thinking about is how, as an African American in a corporate space, all eyes really are on you. And it really is a crucible in a way, and that can feel either crushing or challenging or like you're on the hot seat. But when I walked into Procter & Gamble in February of 1993, there was also visibility on me around whether I could do it or not. And so all of the things that I was capable to do and had developed as a leader within the National Society of Black Engineers or at Purdue, some of those leadership capacities were able to demonstrate themselves early in my career, and everyone saw it because people were paying attention, with some maybe having a question about whether I would make it or not. And so initially there was like, okay, this one might be a good one. He might be able to handle this. It might be able to, but then others who were mentors for me, who looked at it and saw that there were some things I didn't know, and I didn't know what I didn't know. We had a paper African-American community team at the time within baby care and family care. And this group of African-Americans would get together on some frequency to just talk about what it meant to support one another, to challenge one another constructively, and to help each other be better. And so other efforts like the Black leadership team of R&D at Procter & Gamble were other things that I was connected into, coached up, trained up, supported, constructively challenged, had opportunities to lead different things that were going on to further, enhance the leadership capability and be able to establish a track record, both of delivering results in the business, but then also to be seen as a result of the fact that there weren't as many African Americans at P&G at the time as we wanted, right? I had the opportunity in 2003, 2004, I was working with a partner in our marketing organization on the Charmin brand. And literally David Taylor, who's recently retired as the CEO of Procter & Gamble, he was our general manager. And he basically sat and taught us strategy. The three of us would sit in conference rooms because he's commissioned the two of us to lead this effort to try to reshape the Charmin brand. And he was in the huddle room with us on Friday mornings at 7 a.m. teaching us about strategy. He'd gone to Harvard, he'd gone to all the things, and we learned from him what it meant to make choices and what it meant to not say yes to everything. And it was just formative and meaningful. And so there's just been so many leaders who've invested in me and challenged me, believing that something was possible and demanding that it come through. And so that's been, a crucible really of leadership for me that's still serving me today.
So let me ask you this, in those meetings on those Friday mornings at 7 o'clock, were you the only one in there?
No, the three of us. So David Taylor, our general manager, John Brazzi, who was the marketing leader, myself from the R&D side, we were co-leading this effort. And so he was talking with us through what would be some of the choices we'd have to make down the road, and helping us understand what it meant to be strategic and to not try and do everything, but to make some choices on who we wanted the Charmin brand to be.
Again, but you ended up being a global vice president. Right. And the one thing I'm asking that I'm about to ask you now is a question I'm asking myself in this current moment. And I've asked it over the last really decade. It's like, why me? Right. Like, why do I have to go through this struggle? Right. Why is it me that has to be the one to speak up? Why is it me that has to be more responsible? Right. And so my question to you was like, what was it about you? But really, why you? Like, why was it you? What about you in your journey? Talk to me,
When I hear that question, the thing I think about instead of why me is, or why do I have to, is the opportunity I get to, right? The opportunity that it presents, right? Because it's challenge and it's difficult. But again, when you see and know that it is inside you, when you develop enough of belief that you do have what it takes inside of you, when you're in those moments, the big time, PT peer moments, as Dick Vitale would say, the moments when it's on the line, et cetera. There were a number of projects that I stepped forward and tried to be the leader of because it was going to make a big difference in the success of the Charmin brand. Those were risky moments. By stepping into that leadership challenge, we were able to work together with all the multifunctional resources to go figure it out. But leadership was something that I was studying, I was trying to become better at, and I had a certain skill for that. Then it created the opportunity to demonstrate, right? And so that was something that provided me to not be afraid because I was stepping into the risky moments, the high profile situations with enough confidence in myself, but also the approach of involving the others and bringing their best ideas into what we were doing. So I never felt like it was on me alone. And so it was an opportunity for us to step into that challenge, to take that risk and really declare what we thought was necessary in that case for the brand. And that was ultimately something that helped people see that there might be some leadership capability that they wanted to leverage on some different part of the business.
Declare what we thought was necessary. I told you, listen, it comes natural to you, my friend. It comes natural. It comes natural. And another part of your story alongside your corporate career is ministry, right? You mentioned your father was a minister. So could you talk more about your entry in the ministry? Then we'll move into your PhD.
Yeah. Well, I told you the start of it was at 14, 15 years old. For context, my father began preaching when he was 14 or 15 years old. My older brother also began ministry at 15. And that was the reason why in 1981, we moved from Durham, North Carolina, where we lived with my mother, my two brothers and I, moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, where my dad was a pastor, because my older brother was going to be a preacher and they wanted to learn. So my dad was saying, listen, don't you feel like this is the only way for you to make an impact? We need somebody in our family to make money, was his joke. Because honestly, there were weeks when my dad was serving at Unity Fellowship Baptist Church, shout out to Unity Fellowship in Indianapolis, Indiana, where he would have a love offering, and that people would come to church, they would put something in the plate, and he would joke, there's some weeks that there was more love than others, you know what I mean? And that was the way he was protecting and caring for his family. And he created the possibility for us to go into different spaces. So I was thinking about what's the way, I leveraged this education piece to get to something. What he said when I was talking to him in my 20s around feeling like there was this calling to ministry, he literally said, run from a calling to ministry as long as you possibly can. He said, because honestly, if God is calling you to a ministry different than what he calls all of us to, right, then you will know. I think Paul in Ephesians 4 talks about all of you. I want you to live worthy to what you have been called to do, which is to be gentle, to be humble, to be kind, to be a person who represents that. And we're all called to that. So my dad is like, if you feel like you're called to something beyond that, I want you to know that you know that you know, because what you don't do is start into this and then turn around. You don't put your hand to this and then decide, I'm out because it's difficult. And that was very powerful for me as well, because eventually by the time I thought that there was something that I was called to in a ministry context, I had looked at it long enough, I had listened long enough to understand that it wasn't about being in the spotlight of a pulpit or having all the people kind of looking at you, but it was about serving. It was about being one who ministers. And so honestly, today, I grew up Baptist, for context. And so a lot of times people talk about Reverend so-and-so. The Reverend title is something that's always been a challenge for me, because I don't see myself as someone that people are supposed to give reverence to, but I think of myself as one who ministers, one who serves, one who lives in a way that people say, what's the difference with you? What's the reason why there's something, I knew you before, and there's some things that are different now. And so I try to live in a way that at least creates that curiosity with people that I serve with and that I work with, so that it allows for us to have open, candid, transparent conversations around the things I'm still learning and the things I'm still being saved from, if you will, and not that I've arrived or I'm seeing myself as special or different or, above something. And so it's been a wonderful thing. I work in the school board of Wyoming because it was an opportunity for me to serve this community, to be one who thinks about having the excellence of our district's education be available to all of the students, not just the students who are great athletically or academically, but all of the students here in Wyoming. And so that's a way I think of as ministry, in a way of serving this community.
That's so dope, man. And you mentioned that your definition, your practice, application has evolved over the years, right? I mean, we're just with growth and experience. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you're pursuing your doctorate, and if I'm not mistaken, faith, works, and economics.
Faith, work, economics, and vocation.
What is that? What does that even mean? Right? Like, how'd you find that one? Like, but what does that even really mean?
Reason I selected it. So I stepped out of a role on the staff of a church in January of 2014 and began thinking about what's the next step, what's the thing going on. And so I bumped into some people who were talking about some things they were doing at Fuller Seminary. And so I went onto their website to look. And there's a number of reasons, a longer story, why Fuller Seminary in Pasadena has always been a special place to me. Pasadena is probably my favorite part of California. But I looked on their website and I looked at a lot of things that were looking at how do we bridge racial divides, kind of in church and in kingdom, because that matters to me, and I'm serving in some ways to go do that. But part of me felt like I'm going to live that whether I want to or not. And so what I want to study is this way that people in their 20s and 30s, when you're thinking about performing in a job, producing and providing, you could also think about what does purpose look like. I think your generation does this much better than ours, right? Baby boomers and my generation, which I can't even tell you what I am. You had this idea of you go to work, you make some money, you make a life, and then at a certain point, when you get to be 45, 50, you have this midlife crisis, you buy a Corvette, some people divorce their spouse, and then you think about how do you live a life of purpose? And many people think you have to leave the job that you have to go work in a nonprofit, to go be a missionary, go do all these kind of things. What I was hoping to do with this degree is be valuable for people to think about how do these integrate from the beginning? How do we see that the work that we do is an opportunity to be who we are and to live what we believe? And so the faith, the work, economics, and vocation it was exciting and interesting. And so I'm in year one. There's 2 more years to go on the content before we start writing on projects and all that. And it's called a doctorate of ministry, different than a PhD, because it's designed for people who are in the course of doing work in the area. And so they're not coming out from that to go to school completely in a way that you are in a PhD. It's sort of designed to be a practical application of doctoral level studies. And so that's the slight difference with it. Like I said, I'm in year one, and by next Tuesday, I got to finish my last paper for this first year. But it's been an incredible benefit for me, just cementing some truths that I've lived, because I've bumped into some things accidentally. I've made some choices about walking away from a career at Procter & Gamble to go work at a church, because there was this part of me that felt like if you at some point, Illya, don't walk away from this thing that's on a path to more and more financial riches to demonstrate how much you really believe, how much you really want it, then maybe you don't want it bad enough. You know what I mean? And inherently, those were some things that were seeded in me, as I grew up in church, and they were incomplete. We think about the disciples walking away from their nets to go follow Jesus. And that was true, but so many other people participated in his ministry while they were doing their day jobs. And there's an opportunity for us, as I think about it, to participate in the work he came to do, while we are serving on the school board, while we are, working at Kroger, while we are, doing the things that we're doing, living our lives in authentic ways. And so I want to help learn more about that, and then help others see ways they can do that and be in joy on a regular basis.
Talk about it. That's dope. And what's your paper on Tuesday? What's the topic?
It is called basically looking at what does the Bible have to say about work, and what does it say about the way we ought to think about the value of work, and why work matters, why it's a good endeavor for us to be in the world trying to live the faith that we learned and operate and learn more about it, not just in the church on the 90 minutes that we might spend in a Sunday before quarantine. Most people were, who believe themselves to be Christian were doing something, on a Sunday for an hour and a half to 3 hours, depending on your denomination. But it's different, kind of in many ways. And that's not the only hour, the only 2 hours of time that it matters what you believe. And honestly, people know what you actually believe by the way you live. And so part of me is just trying to be more focused on living those things and integrating, the development, the innovation aspects of my life with the faith is something I figured out how to do while pursuing a seminary degree, while working, while serving in church. I just want to help people think about how to put those things together intentionally.
That's amazing, yo. So I want to pivot to segment 2. And one thing you mentioned earlier, and I'm going to talk about this in this story, was that we think it's been 15, 17 years. I don't know. It's been some years.
Let's say 15. Let's say 15.
Let's just say 15, right in between like Carolina's 05-09 championship. Shout out to Carolina. They win tonight, actually. But my mom came to UN church, right? Yeah. And when you said declare what we thought was necessary, right? She declared that what she thought was necessary, which is a mentor for her oldest child, the best and favorite child, Timothy. And wanted you to be that person, yo. Yeah. And so in that moment, you had no kids. None. And for some reason you said yes. So I only know the part of the story, again, I was 12 years old at the time, but like that y'all have shared with me. Yeah. But for as much as or as little as you want to share, like what was that conversation like? And then what was that decision-making process for you to ultimately say yes?
Yeah. It's funny because it wasn't actually in church. Our church had a Valentine's Day event. Wow. At a place. My wife was there. I think your mom might have been working at the door, and we were up kind of at the front, just kind of welcoming people and all that. And she said something. She's like, "Hey, I want you to think about something." We just had this brief conversation, and so she mentioned that, and I was like, "Well, yeah, that would be great, right?" And part of me, I think, 15 years ago, I was 30, my mid 30s or what have you, and we were doing multiple things. I tried to be a big brother and big sister at a certain point, without a lot of success. But many people had built into me. Had helped me become what I was becoming. And so the idea of you at 12, 13 years old, I was like, yes, I would like to do that. And then honestly, I connected with Adam Hayden, who has been my mentor on how to be a mentor, right? Because part of what I was trying to understand is, what does it mean to not think about sitting down and teaching you stuff or this, that, or the other, but just, he told me about a book. It was called The Be With Factor. And what it talked about was that the benefit is relationship, that the benefit is presence, time together, engaging, kind of in each other's lives. And that's why the soccer piece, was just a way. That was something you were doing at the time. I didn't know much about the game at all. And it was a way we sort of was around each other and with each other and to connect. And I want to say a big thanks to my wife, Patricia, because at the time I didn't remember that I knew your mom especially well. And I think I didn't know that my wife, knew your mom and that kind of thing. Well, we said yes to this in a way, and
Yeah,
not even recognizing it that time. And then we were in Japan. You had a chance to come over, and Australia, doing Christmas together, and just over the course of time, inviting our lives to intersect in ways that mattered. And so as you were working through college and other things, there was need for perspective, for engagement, and for impact. And it created the context for the relationship we have. You know what I mean? So I've learned as much as I've taught, and I value the fact that you're in my life, and that I learned so much from you. And I get to walk with TFB today. That's a big deal to me.
Hey, I've been walking with you for a minute now, yo. But you not only model what it means to be present, right? What it meant to be in relationship with me. But you also did things, again, for example, like invited me to Australia. Yeah. But I want to first start with this jersey that you gifted me, right? That you got from Asia. And when I thought about driving from Chick-fil-A again today, shout out to the 12-count nugget I ate in the car, is that like those moments, looking back now, almost 12 years ago, was inviting me the opportunity, as you said earlier, to then pursue this career in international education, which I've been honestly pivoted to over the last 2 years, right? Yeah. Like you were someone who took me abroad out of the US, someone who brought back different things from another country and said, like, look, there's more than just Cincinnati, Ohio, right? There's more than just the Buckeye State for you to learn, explore, and to lead in, right? Wow. And so one thing I want to say on the record, one is thank you. Because I didn't know that it would open up opportunity for me to look back and reflect on, to be like, yo, like I've been doing this. Like I've been an international educator for now 12 years, didn't know it. Yeah. But then two, ask you, like, what has mentorship meant to you over the last 15 years? And I'm happy to speak from my perspective as well. Sure. Given that I was out, sorry, Michaela Morgan, I'm the favorite. I'm the oldest. Right, but you now have the 2 kids of your own.
Absolutely, the only son, the only son that I have, right? Yeah. It's funny when you think about mentoring. When you were talking about what happened, that I didn't really think about it, or wasn't a conscious thing. I'm going to do this and then this and then this. My father, though, when we lived in Indianapolis, he went to preach in Haiti. He went to these different places, and sometimes he would bring back a T-shirt. Sometimes he would just bring back a hug. But he was going places and doing things, and in some ways coming back and sharing some of that story. And I would watch and see and learn, and it broadened my world beyond just Indianapolis and moving to these different places. Being at Purdue University and going to different. I've always been aware of how the world opens up, and so for me, jumping into the opportunity to be in Asia with all of the challenge of it was about getting to another dimension around what the world looked like. And partly as it related to I just wanted you to see some of those things that I was seeing and to enjoy some of that together, not with a conscious intention that it would have any specific effect, but with a lived experience of what you see impacts what you believe that you will be. And so that opportunity of you being there with us, even though it rained almost the entire time we were in, Australia, you know what I mean? But also too, you being around with my kids, and around them, they were like looking up to you and seeing different things and, all of that. And so there was a mutual benefit. And it's because for me, mentoring and people who cared enough to tell me things I didn't know that I didn't know, and to listen to questions, that were sometimes probably silly in their mind, but to share what they had is one of the reasons why, for me, I think about people who are close to me having access to anything that I am and anything that I have.
I mean, I get that, right? And I think one of our things is it's definitely travel. It's also sporting events, and I get there in a second, right? Because you have your own thing with breakfast and IHOP and pancakes for other people. That's fine. They can have that, right? We like the sports. We like Carolina basketball. We like going to the events. A little bit. Just a little bit. And so, like, you mentioned being present. You mentioned this relationship piece, but like I'm not looking for compliments, if you will, but like literally, what have I taught you along the way? Because there's so much that I can point to and we'll speak to about what you taught me is being present. But like, what have I taught you along the way?
Well, watching you in the role of, I think it was student body president, kind of at South Carolina, actually coming there and seeing you when you were pledging, participating with those kind of things, the dimension of what feels like a focus and an intentionality, and you stepping into spaces with speaking and kind of sharing your story with people and living out of that in ways that is shared with other people, even in the journey of it, before it's pretty and perfect and all of that. But your style is kind of fly too. It's a whole different style than what I'm doing. When I see you, on the walking with TFB, I think, I need to step my game up a little bit. You know what I mean? But it's just that intentionality, that impact that you have with people and on people, and even going to run after, a PhD and the master's degree at Ohio State. There's an intentionality with which I feel like you live your life, which is phenomenal to me. And it continues to push me and to challenge me around where am I going next? And what does that do for the people connected to me? And how do we benefit from continuing to take steps as opposed to at any point resting on the things that have already happened?
And that's why I laugh and I smile, because I'm like, I got that from you, homie. Like you and Leslie and Anita, like I got that from y'all. And so for me, it's like hearing it is like, wow, like embrace it, right? Being in tune with your emotions, not emotional, but being in tune and really feel what you're feeling, which is important, especially for us men out here. Yeah. But then too, to be like, yo, like, is what, again, I asked, like, why me, right? Was this my opportunity to get to do that for you, right? Yes. With you, alongside you.
Yes.
And but also, how do I continue to honor and acknowledge that in my own purpose journey, right? And be able to invest back in those both beside me, but also coming after me, right?
Yeah. I mean, we had that conversation at different points around who is it that you're pouring into? Who is it that you are actively and intentionally, paying this forward to? And that's important, because, you can just get deep with to whom much is given, much is required. And so that's why I think about having the opportunity to be in this space. There's still not enough African-American men doing PhD programs. There's enough people speaking out and stepping out and kind of leading in ways that create space for other people who might feel like they don't have, what it takes, but that's something that you're doing. And in infecting other people along the way to see it that way and to kind of step into it in that way. And it matters a great deal. If there's anything I could say to you, in addition to, again, how you have impacted me and continue to inspire me, is you are on a trajectory in your life and in your leadership that you will lead out of the things you're living that is far, far beyond, the things I've seen or witnessed or experienced. And that's something that gives me joy, because it's supposed to be that way. The people who come behind us are supposed to go further than us, because we're ideally, if we're getting a chance, helping them start further ahead. And if they didn't start further ahead, be able to run faster, because there's a tailwind there that is encouragement, that is belief, that is confidence, that is clarity, that is living your life inside this cloud of witnesses, right? And so for me, I celebrate seeing what's happening on LinkedIn or seeing the Instagram or various things that you're doing, realizing I am in the cloud of witnesses that walks with TFB, sometimes together in the same place, at an event, and sometimes from wherever, whenever, but it's always squad. It's always love, and it's always a deep presence.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, yo. I remember this time we were driving I'm still pissed thinking about it actually out loud. We were going to Ohio State. I think it was raining. It was the Ohio State Michigan game. I think it was 2015. Remember Michigan State kicked that field goal at the very end. Dude started going to windmill. Yeah, it's pissed.
Yeah.
And one thing you said in the car on the drive up there, because I was saying like, yo, like I don't want to be like this, right? I don't want to be like that, and I feel like I'm becoming this, and I'm not. And you said something like you drift towards what you think about, like you drift towards your thoughts. Remember this conversation?
Yeah.
And so my question to you is like, what are you thinking about right now? Like, what are you drifting towards?
Yeah, well, the discussion was that the mind can't avoid a don't. And so while we often talk about what we don't want to be like and who we don't want to be like, the more we talk about that, the more we drift toward it, right? To not focus on the thing that you don't want to be, but think about what is the North Star. Think about what is the thing that's got your energy so much that you run after that, and then you become. And so honestly, for me, and in this last year and a half coming out of the role that I was in, I planted lots of seeds and done lots of things that's grown into this garden. I got to prune some things and kind of tear back some stuff because it's a little overgrown right now. But I've had the opportunity to support leaders who are trying to make their organization stronger, to make the impact in their organizations better and greater. And that's something I've always had a passion for and just had the opportunity to do with more like 70, 80% of my time in this degree situation, where it's putting together so many different aspects of things, connecting with people from all kinds of communities, people in the church space, in nonprofits, and in corporations. And even for me at this age, it's just been a reminder that there is no boundary around the space within which you can make impact if you will be present in those moments. And so I've been trying to think through what are the maximizable moments and the greatest articulation of the things I've had experiences in and built some energy or some commitment to and some capability in, so that these years I live, these days, that I live, had the maximum impact. Not that somebody's making a naming a park after you or some of those kind of things, but just that the people you're in life with experience the good that's in you in ways that makes them want to be the best they are, and to share that with other people.
Well, then what's the criteria to which you, I guess, for lack of better words, grade those moments, right? Because you mentioned that the conversation on Fridays, right? Learn how to say yes, but not to everything.
Yes.
And so how do you continue to do that even now with these moments that are not just presenting themselves, but also maybe created as well?
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges for me in this moment right now is there's 6 or 7 different things that I've been doing. And
Sure.
the challenge of this moment is to pare those things down to the 3 or 4 that are most impactful. And in limiting in that way the number of things that I'm involved in, ideally it can maximize the effect or the presence within that. And so, honestly, part of it is where the opportunities exist.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I still have responsibility to lead a family and to pay a mortgage. And so that's a good criteria that you consider as you think about what of these wonderful things that you're passionate about and you got this energy about can be financially viable, and to have that as a consideration, and then identify which of those other things fit in and around that, so that I live passions that I have while doing things I'm good at that allows for there to be that impact and some financial. And so I'm still a month away from having that finished completely while I'm getting a chance to do some of these wonderful things that I'm doing. But the criteria, honestly, for me, is that it provides me the opportunity to invest in the development of leaders that impacts the empowering of an organization to maximize the result. And there's spaces where I'm doing that within church space, within nonprofit space, and actually some of the things that I'm doing with corporations and whatnot. And so it makes me feel like I'm in purpose and I'm on purpose. And that's kind of the filter that I've looked at on what are the right things for me.
I love that, yo. And what people often say that experience is the best teacher, right? Experience is the best piece of education. And over the last, 8 years, you stopped out of a job, started a job, stopped out of another job. I mean, you're basically a millennial at this point. Welcome to the club, right?
Yeah, I feel like I might be included. 5 years, April 1st, it'll be 5 years that I left my job at P&G. And so looking back, 2017, I actually went to see Carolina in Phoenix when they were in the Final Four, winning their last national championship. That was the weekend that I stepped away from my role in P&G on March 31st. And on April 3rd, I started working at the church. And so it'll be 5 years next week. And so it's been, a fruitful journey, and there's been a lot of change. Like you said, I feel like I've changed things so many times now. I get credit. I have some sense what my kids what you all are going through and what's happening. So I don't fully understand, but I'm getting closer.
I mean, with 4 roles and 5. Listen, I don't. You're walking. We appreciate that, right? That's what
it's unfolding.
My point. What have you learned about yourself though these last 5 years?
I've learned what it is that really makes me tick. The thing that ties all of this together is what I described a minute ago. The thing that matters to me is investing in the development of individuals and that organizational effect to maximize. I'm a maximizer by strength area. I'm a futuristic person focused on the innovation kind of a thing. And so it's an opportunity for me to be an ingredient in changing the trajectory for individuals and people, kind of in spaces. That's what gets me going. And so just had the opportunity to do that across a lot of different spaces. So looking forward to the next 10 years. You know what I mean?
Me too. Well, we cannot move forward in this podcast without talking about another very important part of your, not just education, but also mentorship, which is fatherhood. Mm-hmm. So you had kids, I think, well, again, you're millennial, right? You had kids a little bit later. That's what we're doing right now. That's what we do. I told you, you're millennial by trade.
I'm gonna embrace it. I'm gonna embrace it. I appreciate that. Coming from, if you say I'm in, then I'm in. I'm gonna put it on.
I appreciate that, yo. But what have you learned about fatherhood? Literally, because again, you and my mom around the same age, but obviously her having me at 21, 22 is different than you having Michaela later in your 30s, right? And so both seeing, obviously mentoring me before kids and then having your own kids, and then what is it meant to be a father? Like, talk to us more about that, because that's a very special role.
Yeah. I was thinking about a conversation we had once, and I was walking around the conference room at my office while we were having the discussion. And I just remember it was a big moment. It was a challenging moment. You were in university at the time, and I was in a place of caring about you deeply, being very interested in your future and trying to be of help to you as you were processing through things. But I remember thinking that you were processing through this and you had to make a decision. And I was supporting that, being perspective, holding a mirror to it or whatever. And at my best, that's a role that I'm playing now with my 15-year-old and my 13-year-old. People say when your kids are small, you go from being caretaker to being the cop, to being a coach. And we're in coach mode right now. And there's times I got girls. Like, I grew up the middle son of 3 boys. There was no female energy in our household at all when we moved to live with my dad. So this teenage girl thing, I'm gonna tell you, it's a lot. some days. People would say to me when they were little, like, wow, I feel really bad for you because you live in a house full of women. I was like, dude, I got this. What are you talking about? I can be outnumbered, but I'll never be outgunned. Yeah. And then they became teenagers, and I'm just like, holy shnikes. I mean, there's moments where I know I walk in my house and I'm wrong. I haven't said anything. I'm wrong. I did it. I'm to blame, like whatever it is. And so part of what I'm learning about being a parent right now is to not take it personal. Because part of the phase they're in is finding out who they are, and some of that they find with distance and separation and space, and trying to create that space. Because one of the things that my dad did was serve the church and serve the Lord. And there were times where I wanted him to come to my soccer games, come to my basketball games or baseball games. And he wasn't able to be there. And so I decided everything they ever do, I'm going to be there all the time, whatever. And these last 5 years have given me so much opportunity. And right now, one of the things they're saying is, Dad, it's okay if you don't come to everything. It's okay if you give us some space in some ways to practice the things that you and mom are teaching us and to learn from that, et cetera. And so the challenge I'm in right now is giving enough of that space so that they're seeing those things and experiencing without such a fear that any failure will be fatal, that I need to jump in, engage, or rescue. And it's challenging because I want to participate. I want to support. I want them to live every aspect of all their potential and not miss a thing. And I'm a teacher, and so I'm always trying to teach in every single moment. And my kids in the car sometimes will be, Dad, are you about to give us a Martin Luther King speech? Are you about to give us a I Have a Dream speech? And I'm just like, no, 2 minutes. 2 minutes and that's it. I'm put my timer on. I literally put the timer on, 2 minutes and I'm done. You know what I mean? And so I'm just learning how to listen and to not feel like they're going to learn more from what I say than what we're doing and what they're experiencing, right? Because I caught a lot from my dad and my parent, my mother, right? Who was, I would probably say, the greatest minister of all the people that are preachers, kind of in my family. And I caught those things, and learning to trust that they're catching things because of people that are in their life. An older brother for them, other people in their life, they're catching things and sometimes putting things into practice that I don't even see. And it isn't about me seeing it. It's about them having it. And ultimately me trusting that they're in good shape as a result of our best effort. You know what I mean? Sometimes those teenage, moments are not, it's not for the faint of heart, and so I'm just not taking it personal and not fearing that any failure could be fatal.
You having fun?
Most days. I will tell you, sometimes when it feels like it's cloudy and the sun peeks out, you're like, whoa, like just today, my older daughter asked my wife to take her to school. And she's like, listen, you need to walk. You can do it. You can make it. We live less than a half mile from the school. Yeah. And so she came in to ask me, will you drive me to school? And so I was like, yeah, I'll drive you to school. I'm on my little men's group call and whatever else. And so she asked me to drive her to school. And so we dropped off. We did that. She might have said like 6 words on the way, right? So we do that or whatever. And I get a text message at 10:30. It says, hey, meant to say, thanks for taking me to school today. You know what I mean? And it tripped me out how big of a deal that was, because I called her mom and I said, did you tell Michaela to say thank you for me giving her a ride? She's like, I didn't have anything to do with it. And I'm just like, man, okay, all right. Little things, you know what I mean? So I'm having fun today. And some days you don't feel like you're winning. You don't know you're ahead, but I'm still in the game. So I told someone last thing, when you're little, you always wanted to keep your kids alive. You didn't want anything bad to happen or whatever. And that was not running out in traffic or anything like that. Right now, there's days where I want them to stay alive by me not putting my hands around their neck. You know what I mean? So I joke and I say they're alive. You know what I mean? They got a chance. We still got a chance today to see what we can get done. And it's been good. I feel thankful that we're trusted, with them to try to help them see what's right for them and to take some of those steps.
Man, I'm telling you, 5 years empty nester, man.
Yeah. 6 years. 6 years. Yeah. So that's scary too, in its own way, right? So my wife and I get to relearn each other, in terms of a different context, right? Because there's a different way we're going to be engaging in that role as parents and kind of finding each other again. So we got a little time to prepare, but I'm trying to make sure that goes smooth as well. Just
give me a heads up. Y'all plan to move south, yo. I'll give you some suggestions on where to live. Like,
I need to know. I wouldn't mind. Let us know.
That's facts, yo. Segment three, we talked about your career, really your purpose in ministry, your journey through corporate, your dog experience, and even your entrepreneurial pursuits with Thomas Consulting LLC. So this segment is probably the most important to me. And the question is, how can our podcast community best support you? Right? What can we do to support you?
Yeah. Well, part of it is staying connected within it, right? They say that you become the result of your closest five friends. And so for me, you doing this thing that you're doing, it encourages me to know that the world is still changing for the better as a result of people who have the ability choosing to put themselves in the arena. And so this set of conversations, this community that's looking to support one another, constructively challenge one another, create space for one another, and lift as you climb, that's something meaningful. And so if nothing else, it makes me know that's still happening and has me thinking about how do I do that well? And so being connected within this space that you've created, that means a lot. And I literally have two daughters, who are still figuring out what they want to do and be. And I'm trying to keep connecting them in spaces with people who are doing some interesting things and different kinds of things. And so next time we come out that way, we might stop by the university and get a tour, just to kind of always show them things, always have them see some things so that they can think about what they can become.
Well, that, yeah. I mean, you don't got to be Maryland. Any school in the continental U.S., I'm sure I know at least somebody or somebody that knows somebody that can.
That is true. That is true. I believe that to be true.
I learned along the way, my friend. Well, before we bounce, I had to go get an artifact. So just stay right here. I got to get something real quick, and I'll be right back.
Don't mess me up now. Don't mess me up. Don't mess me up.
We back in the game, yo. So before we bounce, just a few questions for you. A few questions. I guess you can call it like speed round, rapid round. The first question, I'm excited for you to answer this because you have a good answer. But your favorite sports memory? It could be one that you watched, one that you attended, one that you participated in.
There's a lot. I would say being at the Carolina Duke game in Cameron Indoor Stadium. I think it was the last year of Matt Doherty, and seeing Carolina Duke in Cameron. Big deal. Only second to getting the opportunity to walk out onto the St. X field with you and your mom at senior night when you were graduating from high school. That's my favorite. And then Duke Carolina is a close second.
Duke Carolina gotta be first. You don't gotta do that because I'm waiting for the day to go. I'm like begging, waiting for the day to go. That's a good memory though. Top 5 artists. Question 2. Top 5 artists of all time across any genre. No rank.
Any genre. We talking about musical artists?
Yeah, music. If you're gonna go art, you can go art too. Traditional art.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna start with Prince, just because I'm of that era and generation. I'd probably secondly, surprisingly, say Fred Hammond. He's just been my guy from the beginning. Like my whole journey around the thing and the music as the soundtrack for that has been a huge part of it. Miles Davis, as it relates to just a classical transformational level and experience of music. And every now and then when I need moments, I just kind of drift away a little bit with Brother Miles. That's only 3. Man, I probably say Monet or one of the Impressionist painters. When I was in Paris some time ago and I'm looking at what kind of art that really, really matters to me, the Impressionist thing is kind of special. So I think that's 4. I might be able to come up with one more, but I'm not sure.
Hold on. I'm glad you brought this up about Paris. How many countries do you think you've been to?
I don't know. It's
more than 100?
No, probably not. Probably 60 or so. But I've been in parts of Asia, some parts of Africa, which I'm really thankful for in terms of getting a chance to see different parts there. Europe, I've traveled to lots of places. South America is probably the space I'm most interested to get to and the one I've least explored. But
wow. Okay, well, we'll set you up for. We'll add Drake to that list because Drake's my favorite artist.
Yeah. We can do that. We can do that. I'll give you the mulligan.
I appreciate that. If you can go to brunch, actually, screw that. If you can go to IHOP, or Original Pancake House, with 5 people, you plus 5 people,
all at one time.
All at one time. They could be living or deceased. You plus 5 people. Who are you bringing to IHOP or Original Pancake House?
Oh my goodness, that right there. I would probably start with Frederick Douglass, just because of the experience he had in the time in our nation and what he saw and spoke out of. Martin Luther King is required just because of the effect that he's had for me, with me. The whole King, though, the real King, not just the one that sometimes we celebrate in January. 5 people. I would probably say, I don't know, man, that's a tough one. Others. You can't throw this on me like
You have a list. I know you got a list of people.
Abraham Lincoln, actually, surprisingly, strangely.
I would actually.
Interesting. Again, because of that moment, even in understanding between Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln and some of the relationship, they've had, that kind of thing. The other thing, the other two would be my 50-year-old Michaela and Morgan. So my children at 50, it would be interesting to sit down with who they become. And that's one of the things that would be challenging to do, but I get to put it together, then, and of course, Jesus is at the head of the table. I would, it would be his feast that we get invited to. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. And the last question, who do you want to see on the podcast? We talk about education, we talk about sport, we talking about culture. Who do you want to see? Or who do you want to hear from?
Well, some people that we are working with around here who are just doing some really important things in the education space. Catrice Quitter, or I think that's her name, is one of the folks who works with us in the school things we're doing in the school district. As far as education, you should get Ketanji Brown Jackson. That's who you should get in your podcast.
You got a plug?
And don't do her like they did in the nomination hearings, right?
No. You got a plug?
What's that?
You got a plug? You can connect me?
Man, I get started on it. You know what I mean? That would be a bit of a thing. That could blow up your podcast. That'd be a big get, if you will.
Start working.
So
I'll start working.
Yeah.
I'll start working.
I'm looking forward to seeing your mom when that episode comes out. I'm gonna watch that with bated breath. I know y'all gonna have a good time.
Oh yeah, that one was funny. Her and I, we've come a long way since Leon County, Florida A&M. We've come a very, very long way.
Yeah.
Any last words for the podcast? Anything you want to share with the people? Any insight? Yeah. Bible verse, prayer? How you want to end this? Right, you got the second, and I got the last, and you got the
thing I would say, and I've connected with this in the course of the discussion, is just blessing. Not that I am one who can bless you or bless this thing, but the blessing of benefit and impact. I just wish for all of the efforts that you are putting in to being a person who changes the world that you're in, to the people that you're connected with. We often say, I bless you and your entire family. So right now, you don't have, people that you'd say are the family you're building or creating in terms of that, but you are in a community of people that are connected by purpose and by shared experience because you've walked some ways together. And so honestly, my prayer, if you will, is just that you'll just keep going, that you will keep figuratively walking with the view to understand and see what it is that you're supposed to gather and to glean along the way, and how it is you continue to give and be one who transforms the experience of other people by your presence and the presence of God that's in you. So that's the thing with this podcast, with things you're doing, in your studies, with the space that you're in. That's the thing that there's blessing on your ability to see the opportunities, to walk into the opportunity, and to have transformational impact when you take those steps.
I appreciate that. I receive it. It's my new word for the year 29, after my 29th birthday. There's two things in life I don't ever want to lose. Well, there's a lot of things, but two things in particular. One is my hairline. I mean, you kept your hairline pretty intact. Yeah, mine, I'm bald a little bit. We're going low. It's about 1.5. I know it's about 1.5. Chill out. And the second thing is this journal. Is this journal that you got me, yo. And so I'm like, yo, how do I not have this journal on me for this episode? Like, this is the most important moment, the most important page that you ever written, in my personal opinion, that you've written to me outside of the Bible that you give to me. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to read this. Because one thing I've been telling my mom, and I'm definitely about to cry. Dang.
Take your time.
For real, yo, wow. Been telling my mom and my grandma is that people not here forever, right? And one thing my mom, and she's gonna hear this next week, right? She told me to always take pictures of my eyes. And so as soon as I got a phone, my phone right now has 50,000 photos on it, 6,500 videos, because now I can take pictures without her telling me to take pictures of my eyes. We ain't had the money to do so. Nevertheless, I want this recorded because one day you or I will be on this earth, and people can look back on this episode, whether it's on YouTube or the podcast, and hear the words that you wrote to me back on January 26, 2008. So it's definitely more than 15 years, but it's gonna be 15 for the podcast's sake. But what you said in blue ink, as I always write in as well, is that I've been searching for a journal to give you for some time. While I don't journal as consistently as I should, I've always found it a helpful tool for expressing things and later returning to review. After the challenge has been overcome or after the celebration has died down, I chose this one because eagles are majestic, kingly birds, never to be caged up or bound, flying high in the sky with the ability to see far and wide. I see you as a person with great vision, the ability to see the long-term view of things with a mind to plan ahead. Eagles don't fly together in large crowds. I see you as someone wise enough to avoid being constrained or caught up in what the crowd is doing, instead choosing then charting a path of your own. Keep taking things one step day at a time. Don't put undue pressure on yourself. Follow your heart's passion once you've submitted it to God. Have fun and play to win. I share that because I got the eagle feather tattooed on my right tricep. But one thing you said in this podcast episode that is definitely indicative of who you are, but also who you choose to continue to be both for and with me. I was an ingredient to change the directory of myself, right? The trajectory of myself. Yeah. And so for me, I want to say thank you first and foremost, because literally without you, I would not be who I am, would not be where I am, and would not be walking in my purpose. So I want to say thank you, Illya, for everything you've done for me in this life. I appreciate you.
Brother, I know you finishing this whole thing. When I forgot the specific words that were written. I mean, as you were saying, well, you talked about the eagle and the majestic. It's so fitting. I received from my father every time I ever heard him speak. He would recite from memory the King James Version of Isaiah 40, 28 through 31. He said, they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And that was the wording that was written and kind of captured in some of what I was communicating to you. And I didn't recognize at that moment, 14 years ago, that you were my son and that he had given that to me and that I was giving it to you. And you right now are soaring in spaces that I mentioned before that I couldn't have imagined. I don't know if you feel that you're in rarefied air every day. And I just want to encourage you to know that you do have everything and more that it takes to soar into all of the spaces you're in and all of the spaces that you'll get to, and to never fear that next dimension, because it's going to continually unfold over and over and over again to an ever widening space for ever greater impact. And so bless you. Thank you for including me or connecting me, like I said, into this process, into this community, and paying forward so greatly the things that you are for me, and for other people. Thank you.
I receive it, yo. And I asked earlier why me, but I think it's clearly evident now, about 65 or so minutes later. Why not me? Why not us? And so I encourage both of us to keep walking. Let's keep walking, yo.
Keep walking. Keep walking.
For everyone else, thank you again for tuning in to episode 19, really part 1 of the season finale of season 4 of the Walk with TAB podcast. You heard some wise words from Illya Thomas. Be sure to connect with him. I'll drop all of his information in the description to this podcast. Next week, we turn up with Leslie, otherwise known as my mama. But always until then, walk with me.